Welcome to episode 61 of Crave the Book. In today's episode, Amber and I are covering chapters 85 through 89 of Tracy Wolff Covet. And in this episode, we get spicy because this is really the only spicy scenes that we get throughout all of Covet. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about when it comes to these spicy scenes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Do it, 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 do it. Do it.
Hom.
Do it.
Nom. Hum num num num.
Episode 61. Do it, do it, do it. I'm saying do it with the assumption that that's what I titled the episode because of all the lines that could represent true feelings in romance. You know, there's a lot of lines that people are like, oh, it's so sexy. That's so spicy. But Grace just like, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. I think is the most accurate representation of how we have all been feeling.
Mm-hmm. Just finally.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but then she also says the line, please, it hurts. So, I don't know.
Please, it hurts to wait this long.
Yep.
So.
You're making me wait, making me be patient. This hurts.
Yeah.
It irks me.
Guys, we're covering chapters 85 through 89, which is the collective spice of Covet. We do have some spoilers this episode, so just listen out for the wolf howl, a woo-woo, and make sure that you bounce out. We did have some feedback from somebody who said that they actually stopped listening to the podcast because we give too many spoilers before the spoiler warning. So we will...
Oh, no!
Yeah.
That's not our intention at all.
We'll make an effort not to do that. Sometimes we get excited. But yeah, guys, if you have not read the rest of Covet or Court, you might want to bounce out at the end when you hear the wolf howl. But let's go ahead and jump right in. I will say that I know that we had talked about next week being our Charm episode because Charm comes out on Tuesday, which is the day that we record the podcast. There's no way we can read a book in a day. I mean, we can. We're not going to enjoy it very much if we do that. So expect a full Charm overview for those of you who read it like savages, just like we do. We'll probably do an overview that will air on the 16th. So if you want to skip that week, maybe you can't get your hands on Charm or you are planning to read it a little bit slower, just plan to skip our episode that airs on the 16th because we'll basically do a full overview of everything that we learned and any theories or confirmed theories that we get from Charm. We're going to cover the whole of the book. And then once we get through Court, we will probably do a more in-depth of Charm, assuming that it needs one. I think it just depends on how long it is, right?
And what gets said in it.
Yeah.
We might be like, well, this answers all of our questions.
We don't need to do an entire season of the podcast on it. Now, Court, we definitely will need to do a full season, but we'll see. I don't know if Charm...
That might take a year.
We'll have to do it in larger chunks. But Charm, I don't know if it's going to read... I mean, I know it's longer. It's 600 pages, but will it read more like a novella? Is it going to be necessary to do a whole season of the podcast? We'll see. And maybe we'll leave some of it up to you guys. Maybe we could even do like a mini season where we cover the whole thing in like a couple episodes if it's like not bulky.
Yeah.
So
I'm up for whatever the book can throw at me, and then we will analyze.
Yes.
Based on what comes out. Because neither of us know anything about it really, other than what Tracy has kind of teased. So, I mean, at this point, we're kind of speculating what we're going to be able to do with it, but it might be like the Katmere Academy, where we're like, it actually is not a book. It's...
a reference.
Yeah, like it's like reading a dictionary.
Yeah. Though we know that Charm isn't like that, but if a majority of the book is dialogue, there's not a whole lot to discuss through scenes where...
Yeah, it might read like a play.
Yeah, like a screenplay. So we'll see. We'll let you guys know. So just like I said, the 16th is the date when you can expect a full overview cover to cover of Charm. And if you haven't read it, you can skip that episode. But we're going to jump right in because Grace and Hudson are at the Dragon Court. Last we left off, they just got done dancing and hanging out with everybody. And Hudson has whisked Grace away to her room.
The hallway.
They're in the hallway because I think they
PDA.
They both know that once they enter that room, things gonna get
all bets are off.
Yeah, things gonna get funky.
It made me think. Did the dragons specifically have rooms that no one actually stays in, like a proper guest room? Because otherwise, Hudson wouldn't be able to walk in.
Oh, wait. You mean...
Because there's nothing less sexy than getting to a door and then the woman has to go, I invite you in.
Yeah, they just walk in. Maybe it's implied. Or maybe...
So she does the waggly finger.
Yeah, or if it's your mate, maybe it doesn't matter. She doesn't always invite Jackson in.
Well, because Hudson, like... Was it because she revoked the access and then all of a sudden that was when we were like, oh, they do need to be invited?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's...
Yeah, it made me wonder. Nobody like owns those rooms.
Yeah, it's not really Grace's room. It's just a room.
It's just a room.
It's just a room. It's just the mating room. So Hudson and Grace go in her room and they're getting freaky against the wall. I'm noticing that there is a common trend because I've read a lot of smut. I've read a lot of books that are like more YA with a little bit of smut in them, to the acceptable degree, which I will admit that Covet is a little extreme for even what I see in most YA. It does kind of push along the perimeter of what would normally be acceptable in YA. It does lean into NA a little bit, and I realize
it definitely implies a lot of things that children wouldn't be able to pick up on the implications of.
Yeah.
But
Twilight kind of fades to black.
In the like Twilight fades to black, and then it just is like, oh, the aftermath of it. Not I'm actually taking off a belt and dragging his trousers down whilst he has his arms behind his head. I'm like, well, what else would that be?
Yeah. But what I've noticed is with my favorite characters is that permission to lose control, where they're thoughtful. They do ask for permission. They're not being rapey or anything. They say, you don't know what you're asking for. The moment you say that this is okay, like, I will lose all restraint on myself. Mm-hmm. And I'm noticing that is what I like. I like those characters, those male characters that are like, I am fully composed until you tell me that I don't have to be. And then...
Yeah, you can unlock that interior persona that you haven't shown anybody else. It's okay to be vulnerable here, but it's also okay to be the other side of you, slightly dangerous, and do whatever you want.
Yeah. And Reese had that in A Court of Thorns and Roses, and Cassian had it to a degree, but I think that Nesta was just as crazy as he was, so...
Well, she was a bit more... What's the word? Experienced?
Yeah, well...
Than either Grace or...
Yeah.
I mean... yeah.
We actually don't know if Hudson had anybody before Grace.
No, we don't.
I'm assuming he didn't.
No, but he seems to know what to do flirting-wise. It's not clunky.
No. Well, I mean, what are you going to do with all that time if you're that old?
Not practice flirting. It's not like he's going to like peacocking classes.
But he's read a lot of books, so
So you got to wear the hat, then you got to wear the earring, because then it distracts. It attracts people to look over like, why are you wearing a silly hat? And it's like, well, it got you looking, didn't it? It's like, dude, that doesn't work in real life.
I don't know. My husband has a curly handlebar mustache. And
but he doesn't do that to attract women. He didn't have that to attract you.
Yeah, but it attracts me now because it's and it attracts a lot of women when we're out in public. He constantly gets compliments from little old ladies who are like, "Oh, I like your mustache." It is honestly adorable to see old ladies flirt with my husband because he has a curly handlebar mustache. But anyway, yeah. So they have the bite. She has an O. She like is quite explicit about the fact that she explodes and screams, but it's not from pain. It's from a release. Not described as an orgasm, but very much implied that she gets bit. I'm gonna have
and the way that she described it with Jackson was very much that you can choose to bite with the intention of bringing one.
Jackson who? Like,
I know, right?
There was nothing like this with Jackson at all.
No. Apparently she's like, oh no, I want to reciprocate. Like, I want to do just as much to you. And then before she's like, oh, actually, before I do any of this, like, oh, do I want to do this? And we all get like so annoyed with the phrase, it's just the mating bond. But we almost kind of skim the words that kind of sandwich it, that come before it and come after it. And I think they're way more important than the it's just the mating bond, because it explains why she's saying it so often. She says, if I let him in, if I choose him, then losing him will absolutely destroy me. And she kind of repeats it like a mantra to almost con herself into believing that it's just the mating bond. Because if she admits that she has way more feelings for him than just the mating bond, then she adds to the sense that she's going to have that loss in the future.
Yeah.
Because she says, I lost my parents. I loved my parents and I lost them. I loved Jackson and he was ripped away from me. And each time I think the separation has got worse. It has become more physically painful rather than just emotionally painful. There is a ripping apart for her that she experienced with Jackson. And she's like, well, and Jackson was not even a real bond. What would happen if it was my true mate and it got ripped?
Yeah.
And I think that she's just kind of trying to put that barrier up for herself and for Hudson. Even if neither of them believe it or both of them believe it, it's not a real statement of it is just the mating bond to me. It's a barrier. It's a cushion between her feelings and the idea that she's going to lose him one day.
And I completely agree with that. I think that the issue with it is that she's fighting something that is absolutely inevitable. There's no way.
I think that was one of the points, though, wasn't it? That she said, like, everybody talks about how much choice is involved in a bond, but I don't feel like I got given the choice, considering I was comatose after being bitten by Cyrus.
Right.
She's like, it's not that I wouldn't choose him. It's the fact that I wasn't even given the option or even was aware that he was my mate until, like, everybody already knew about it before me.
Yeah.
And I think that that's quite a valid feeling. That it's like, well, everybody's kind of screaming from the heavens saying that, oh, no, mates are a great thing. They're an amazing choice that you get to make because you're the only one that's in control. And she's like, I haven't felt in control this whole time. Someone designed a bond between me and somebody that I should not have had a relationship with. And they said that was a choice. And it's like, well, no, I was open to having a a conversation with him. It wasn't like wow, I want to marry this guy and be with him and have lots of babies. It was very much I met you at a chessboard, we touched, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's a little bit of intrigue towards you. It wasn't an obsession. It wasn't unhealthy. It was just a school child crush, the way that she was describing it.
I think with Hudson, I think that the primary issue that isn't being addressed enough between her and Hudson, and what she needs to speak up about, is I believe that, and we'll get the answers in Charm, that because her bond with Jackson was kind of fabricated, that her mating bond with Hudson started during those months that she was with Hudson. I think that their relationship started because she almost she was talking about like them like getting intimate and thinking like normally this would be weird, but it's not. It's so natural. So I feel like, you know, and she kept saying things like, oh, well, I know I wouldn't have been unfaithful to Jackson, but what if it wasn't being unfaithful to Jackson? What if it was one of those like situations where she did not think that she would ever get to return back, and that they were just...
Which after kind of 4 months is quite a valid feeling.
And it was more in it was in our like time, in their time, it was only 4 months, but their time passed more slowly, right? So it could have felt way longer.
Mm-hmm.
They could have had a whole relationship, which I guess we'll find out soon enough, but yeah.
And I mean, she does kind of like say that, like, though she does strike me that how natural this feels, that this isn't the first time we've ever been like this.
Yeah.
But it's like it's not the first time we've been like this. It's not like first time that we've touched, or first time that we've kissed, or first time that we had sex or anything. It's been like this as in like intimate, in bed, and just comfortable in each other's surroundings. Like the way that she kind of said it wasn't necessarily something to do with the act itself.
Right.
It was the feeling of being at home.
Yeah.
And that is probably more of a fear. Like for me, if I didn't remember 4.5 months of my life, but I had that feeling that I'm like, oh, I probably did have sex with you, I wouldn't feel too concerned. But if I felt like it wasn't just we had sex, it was we had an entire different feeling of existence with each other, so that we were so comfortable with each other that we just became each other's nurse. That would be more concerning, because you go, well, what else did I miss out on? Sex isn't everything. And that you can have sex that you regret, but you can't have times in a relationship where you go and you regret the entire relationship, because there were moments of happy.
Right.
And she's like, well, I don't remember any of it. But he clearly does.
He could tell her.
And he's not telling. Yeah. And he's not telling any of it. But yeah. And yeah, there was your note is very frustrating. Of like, she takes off his belt and then just fades to black.
Yeah, she removes his belt and he's like totally accepting of it, and then it's like, and then we go to bed. Like, no. Yep.
Then we go to bed and his eyes are misty with release.
Yeah, misty with release.
Ew.
Ew. I don't like those visuals. You put bad visuals in my head.
And then this scene really irritated me. Because both of them were in the wrong. Like, Grace kind of says, do you mind if I ask you a question? And he goes, of course. And then the question's like, well, I feel really uncomfortable with the fact that you kind of know everything about me, and I know that I once knew everything about you, that we were the same equality of knowing each other, but I know nothing about you now because I don't remember. Just, can you tell me something that I would have known, that you would have told me already? So she's not saying, tell me a secret. It's tell me something that I would have known if I remembered. So he could choose anything. She didn't really restrict what what it was. He could have picked something really random, like the fact that he said that they did star jumps for ages. Like, he could have picked something funny. He could have picked something sexy. He could have picked anything. And the thing that he went with, she immediately dismisses.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, like, you asked him a question and he was like, oh, but I'm trying to distract you. You're not supposed to be thinking. She pushes through with it and then completely disregards what he chooses as the thing.
Yeah, she could have went with more things. She could have said, okay, yeah, I can see that. Tell me something else.
What else?
Yeah, but no, it was that that he's read every...
Or like, what's your favorite?
Yeah, he's read every Shakespeare play twice. But
she's like, well, duh.
Of course.
Which just makes him feel probably very stupid that he's so transparent.
Yeah.
To her. And he's like, well, you said you didn't know anything about me. I told you something that I felt comfortable sharing, and you're saying that what I was comfortable sharing is not enough during this moment where we are literally in bed naked together.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then she goes, yeah, that I'm instigating a new rule. And you're not allowed to kiss me. No kissing until you tell me something new. And he's like, well, I've never been one for rules. And then
pulls her pants down.
Rips off her clothes and goes, there's other places I'd rather kiss. And I was like, oh, smooth moves, dude. Smooth moves. But I felt that was wrong. Where, like, I mean, obviously, they're both horny teenagers and in bed naked and things like that. But he deflected with sex.
Yeah.
Which happens in a few books. And I remember that it's usually the main character gets sidelined. The guy, like, screws her, and then she wakes up after, like, that, like, post-coital haze, and is like, this is nice, and he's gone. He's gone to do the thing that she kind of tried to stop him from doing, or vice versa, like, he distracted with sex.
Yeah.
And it was a really dirty move. It's they're like, oh, I know that biology will take over, and you won't be able to remember what you wanted to ask me or what you wanted to tell me because you'll be distracted. And that's unfair. If for Grace, that was it's not even the first time they've done it, really. It is the first time they've been intimate for her. So those hormones are going to be way, way, way more than if it was 2.5 years down the line in a relationship.
Yeah.
And there's that mutual respect as well. And in a new relationship, especially if one is more experienced than the other, you shouldn't just kind of go, okay, we're doing this now. And she's like, okay.
I hope that we get... Hudson is just so protective over the past. And maybe it's because he wants her to remember in her own time. Maybe he doesn't want to have to explain it to her. He wants her to...
Or maybe most of it was bad. Maybe most of it was spent arguing. And even though they both love bickering and arguing, she may only have trusted him faster in that week where he was in her head. Because he was in her head way more than any other person had ever been. But also because she'd already had that kernel in her mind that he was someone that she could trust.
Yeah.
Because she'd already put in the groundwork. She is literally whisked away to Gargoyle Town with this guy that she'd literally seen, like, waving a sword. I imagine that it wasn't one day of arguing followed by 3.5 months of bliss.
No, and I'm just from the snippets that we've gotten from Tracy for Charm, we know that they argue a lot. Tracy said that was like she loved writing that book because of all of the bickering and arguing. But I hope that it's justified. I hope that the way that Hudson is protective over everything that happened, I hope that we get a good reason for that. I hope that we start to understand from his perspective a little bit better. And I was just thinking, Amber, this is, I guess next week as well, but this is the last little bit of time that we are going to have where we don't know.
Yeah.
Because we're I mean, you know how like when you don't know, there's a magic to not knowing and being able to speculate? That's about to go away, and we're about to have all of the answers. So
I mean, we've been speculating for what, 2 years now? 1 year? 2 years?
over about a year and a half since you got into the series.
Yeah. We've been speculating for 18 months.
Yeah.
About what they did in as many months.
Yeah.
Like from Grace's death of her parents up until the end of court, she has pretty much been in the dark as to everything.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is a single 10 minutes of time where Grace finds out something and is able to stew on the secrets that she has learned without having to dump it on somebody else. Like, she doesn't get a moment to just go, oh, that was interesting. I'm going to sit and I'm going to ponder on it. Every single thing that's happened has been an in the moment, sudden, okay, we found this stuff out. Either somebody's already there with me, or whatever I do learn, I'm going to have to report back to the group in 10 minutes. Everything's life or death. Like, she's not been able to kind of discover the world on her own in a joyful way. It's all been, what can save my life next?
Yeah.
And I'm really hoping that a lot of it is going to be self-discovery, not just how she interacts with Hudson, but also how she interacts with herself as a gargoyle. Like, there's so many things that she knows that she can do and yet doesn't do, and vice versa. There's things that she doesn't know that she can do, but she definitely could. And I'm wondering whether, because she is a gargoyle for her, that moment, because Hudson jokes that she's stoned the entire time, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But she is essentially a gargoyle this entire time, maybe, that she is able to discover what she's actually able to do, like her abilities, and become more at one with herself because she gets to play. I mean, that's how children learn. Children learn through play. They don't learn through constant survival. Because you don't actually get to use the context in which you learn those things in. Like, for she's been able to control trees. She's been able to control water. But at every single time, it was because she had to save her own life. Not because she's like, I wonder whether I can do that. That'll be fun. I see what I can do if I could manipulate this and figure that out. And I'm problem solving and things like that. But she's not been able to. And I'm really hoping that this book is her discovering herself, as well as the relationship with Hudson.
Discovering herself, but then immediately forgetting it all.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
But she's got this time where there is no threat, really. Like, Hudson's obviously not a threat. So whenever she learns that he's fine, every other day that they pass is them just trying to get out of the world. But I bet she spends a lot of it doing jumping jacks, getting bored, and learning about themselves. I mean, what do you do when you get to prison? We say it all the time.
Yeah, you work on yourself.
You get fit and you get smart.
Yeah.
And then you forget everything when you leave.
and you get back on drugs.
Yeah, like I really, really hope that it is. I know that as much as I love my smut and I love Hudson, I don't think I could take 600 pages of a love fest.
Yeah.
I might actually not like him by the end of it. But if he was like, come on, like, what are we going to learn today? Let's see what your powers can do. I'm really hoping that he kind of becomes a little bit more of like a personal trainer with her and things like that. Because he's been magical his entire life. And he's also grown up knowing that a lot more magical creatures exist. Like, he starts talking about basilisks and things like that, like that mermaids exist and things like this, and then no one ever mentions it again. He has a wealth of knowledge. He's read all the books ever. I'm sure at some point they're going to have that like little study session where they get to just go, to hell with the books.
Brain
Get rid
dump.
of the theory. Let's just do some practical.
Yeah. I had initially thought that Charm was just going to be about their time together and conversations and them being locked in a room, but obviously based on the teasers and things we've gotten so far, we realize that there are other characters and enemies and things like that to look forward to. So I don't really know what to expect, but
maybe one of them has magical memory powers.
Magical memories. Anyway, moving on to the next annoying part. Now, you and I kind of have different opinions on this. So you go first, and then I will do my opinions on.
So my opinions are that the sleepy "I love you" turned into such a big deal.
Well, describe the
both of
scene
them-
first, because if they don't know.
Yeah, so Grace is having a mild panic attack in bed. Just thinking about what everything means.
Yeah.
What it means to be mated. What it meant to have a false bond and then a real bond. And like she starts like having all of these panics and stuff. And while she's freaking out, Hudson murmurs in her ear, and they don't say it in the book. It takes a while to get to the point where it actually gets said, but it's very obvious what 3 words he says in her ear. And he is sleepy and like mid-dream, and he clearly says, "I love you," in her ear. But I said, like, dude, don't tell a girl that you love her the morning you spend the first night together. Like, I was like, this a bit clingy. Because from her point of view, if she's been dating him how long?
Yeah.
Like, that's a bit too soon. Not because of how early it is in the relationship, but because of what happened the night before. Kind of like if you get a proposal when you bring a pregnancy test that's positive.
Yeah.
It's did you say that thing because of what happened? Because I would like you to say what you want to say during a moment where there isn't a catalyst for that to occur.
Right. I think that...
Because then you don't know what their intentions are. It's like, are you just saying that to make me feel less insecure about being in a bed with you right now? Like, are you trying to make me realize, okay, so you're not going to leave me? It's not a one night stand. She already knows that. You don't need to say I love you. I know he's asleep, but he's in a lot more control than that. But it makes me think, maybe, when you wake up and you think you're still at home, and you then, when you actually open your eyes, you're like, oh, wow, no, I'm at a friend's house on the sofa or something. Like, when that moment of I felt like everything was normal. Maybe he was just thinking of their time together, and that would have been the normal morning thing for him.
Yeah, and that's what I was also thinking, because there are a lot of moments, and I'm realizing this as I reread Crush as well, where he is back in those moments, and he's like, sorry, like he apologizes, and then he goes cold again, because in his head, like, oh, she's remembering, like he assumes that she's back in those moments with him, like when they're dancing in the laundry room scene as well, they're having fun, but then it all comes crashing down on him. And I think that he does, I mean, that would be hard. I assume that it would be like, if you had a relationship, but then you decided to continue being friends with that person, but you'd been together for a very long time, and you would, accidentally like slip something and then realize like, oh, I forgot we're not supposed to talk like that anymore. But in your head, there's still like a why. Why can't...
And it feels very natural.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it was a combination of him being tired and kind of just, they had such a good night together that was probably very,
triggering.
Yeah, memory inducing. It had him reliving that time together, especially when he said that it was, he talked about that time making him so happy.
But also, the way he explained it away was a very, very articulate and amazing apology.
It was. Because Grace...
It was very, very respectful of what Grace was saying, but it was also respectful of his own feelings. He was like, you cannot tell me how I feel.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me that I can't love you or that I don't love you, because it is very real to me. However, I should not have said it, and I apologize.
But it's not even that she doesn't want him to have said it. Because she
makes him repeat it. She says, like, I want you to say it. I want you to say the truth. Because again, she was like, I am afraid that A, what I thought I heard you didn't mean, or B, you're taking it back because you said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it. And then you go, so you don't love me? And then he's like, I don't know what you want me to say. And she's like, I don't know what I want you to say. But if you tell me the truth simply, at least I'm able to deal with the consequences of that. If it's just I think I heard that, then you're a bit more in doubt.
Yeah.
But it does make me, like, remember, I mean, every relationship I had where the guy was the person that said, I love you first, because it was every relationship. And it was because as a girl, you feel very insecure about being the one to show your feelings first, because you never want to appear desperate.
Right. You don't want them to be like, oh, God, here it's starting.
Not another one.
Yeah.
And I only have the feeling of one relationship where he said, I love you way too early. And that wasn't because it wasn't a great relationship. It was because he wasn't right for me. And I went, oh, God, I don't feel the same.
Yeah.
And the other one was with my Hudson, my husband.
Your Hudson.
My husband. He said it like the night after our first date. But we had been talking for a month over Skype and everything. So I was living in Spain at the time and I'd just come back. And when he said it, it was like, oh, thank God, not
oh, God.
Oh, God. And that feeling of like, oh, thank God. And it was because I'm like, okay, I can finally say it back. I just thought, oh, my God, I love him. And we've been in a relationship for less than 4 weeks. And we've not even gone on a date. We've not kissed each other. We've not touched each other. Like, it's only via Skype. And you never want to be the first person to say it. So, like, that's always a leap of faith. But for him, he's probably said it before.
Yeah.
Grace is hearing it for the first time, and it didn't happen in a moment that she could have chosen. And that's why I'm like, oh, guys. Like, if you want to say that you love someone, you want to firstly say it in a scenario where it makes sense.
And not them barely hearing it.
Both of you are coherent and both of you are ready to hear it. But he kind of said it in the wrong moment. And it wasn't necessarily because of what was happening at that time in bed or whatever. Grace was having a panic attack and therefore probably was in the least reciprocative moment right then to explain her own feelings, because then it spirals her into another one. And that's a true one where she can't get her words out, and it's because of that fear that she's going to hurt him because she's not in the same spot as him.
Yeah, I mean, she does.
Like that,
she does love
that
him.
Sentence. That sentence really, like, it choked me up. Like, it was he was like, and I'm not expecting you to say it back. And then she starts to cry and she says, I don't want to hurt you. And it's like, yeah, like, she cares enough about him to know that if she doesn't say, I love you back, that actually it could be quite hurtful. But she also knows that she wants to say it. Because she goes into this whole thing of, I can't say it. I can show you, but I cannot physically say it. And it's because it's a trigger for her. panic.
Yeah.
It's not that she doesn't want to say it. And it's not, and I think that the word "I can't" is really annoying sometimes because it doesn't always convey the intention and the meaning behind it. That sometimes when I say "I can't today," it's not I don't have the physical time. Because people then go, okay, well, what can I take off of your plate so that you can do it? And I'm like, no, I can't.
You're out of
today.
spoons.
And it's not that I need something to happen so that this happens so that I can then do it for you. It's I can't. But there is no other word for it without you sounding insane.
Yeah.
So I wish that we could come up with another kind of sentence that explains exactly how she's feeling, because she could have said it to him and he would have understood immediately. Like, I physically can't say it, then still sounds like she's struggling to say the words because she doesn't think she means them.
She could have just been honest in this instant and told him the internal dialogue where she says, if I admit to loving him, then I lose him. It will destroy me. She could say those words to him. Mm-hmm. And that would explain everything.
Yeah. I mean, no one wants to say, actually, I love you, and then it cause a panic attack in the person that they love. Because A, that looks way worse than them saying, I don't love you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's like almost like oh my God, I am panicking that they love me.
How do I make it stop?
Because I don't know what to do about it.
Right.
But also, like, that person that you love is in physical pain. They are struggling with something. And when you're in a panic attack, you can't physically get your words out. So even if she wanted to communicate something, she's panicking so much about it, she can't physically speak.
Yeah.
And it's like, I wish that they could be in their heads again.
Where he could just see it.
Yeah, and he'd be like, oh my God, this makes sense.
Like Reese and Feyre.
Okay. Yeah, but at the same time, Feyre can still put up her barriers.
Yeah.
She can still go, nope. And I think that she probably would during a panic attack. Like, the first thing that you want to do is protect yourself and make yourself feel secure.
Isolate.
But yeah, I just was like, everyone that Grace has loved has been ripped away. But the problem is, that's only 3 people. That's not enough to create a rule. And Jackson hasn't gone anywhere. He's just different.
Yeah.
He's still very much alive. And it's very self-protecting of her to have this theory. But she is only 18. So if she's already loved 2 boys at 18 within a very, very short space of time, and one of them was a very, very traumatic breakup. It wasn't just they moved their separate ways. There was a physical pain involved. There was almost death involved. Like, she's probably trying to protect herself from that ever happening again. And with Hudson, it's very, very likely, considering that there is the imminent threat of him having to go to prison. And Falia has literally just said, like, I love my husband, but I hate him at the same time for not coming back to me. He made me a promise that he would always come back. And then she's probably starting that loop of, oh God, I love someone who I can't have.
Right, and
she does say that sentence.
Yeah, Nuri has just told her, too, that it would be better for her to just go on without Hudson, that Hudson's going to get locked up, and her best course of action would be to just survive without him. So she's already got that in her head now.
Yeah, and she said, like, I don't know what I'm going to do if the universe won't let me have him. Which is quite a possessive sentence, but I'm here for it.
Yeah.
That she's saying that things are constantly in motion to stop her from having the things that she wants. She wanted a happy life with her parents, and that got taken away from her. She wanted to have a happy relationship with Jackson, and that got ripped away from her. And she's like, well, I'm going by the exception to the rule here that apparently I'm not allowed nice things. I'm not allowed the things that I want. The universe seems to have other plans for me. but I want Jax. I want Hudson. And she does say that. She's like, I want this. I need this. I want to do this with you to show you.
And then she gives him a blowjob?
Yeah.
Yeah.
After a panic attack, it's probably not the best thing. No. Although maybe, I don't know, like the hyperventilation throat might, you know.
I love how after Hudson talks her through the panic attack, she's like, when the panic attack passes, when I can breathe and think again, I know 2 things. And then it was that she loves Hudson, but that she can never tell him. But it was just like, I know 2 things. 1, Hudson is a vampire. And 2, I am unconditionally and irrevocably in love with him. It was like the exact.
It's true.
It was the same vibe.
I never understood that sentence after the bit where she said, I have a lot more feelings for Hudson than just the mating bond. And 2, I can never tell him. And I didn't understand why until the following sentence when it was, I physically can't tell him. And I was like, oh, okay, I understand. Like, if that's like that sudden removal of inhibitions to say I love you or I feel for you, because then she's admitting it. She's gonna like, oh, I'll just show you, but then she doesn't really show him. She shows him sexually, but she doesn't show him that she will choose him over and over and over again in the next couple of chapters.
For a girl who hasn't had sexual experiences, though, I can understand. I can understand for her age and her experience level that is something very special that she was able to give to him, and that she might.
The thing is, right?
Huh?
This is waking up after, or like going. This is before they go to bed, or no, they wake up.
Wake up. It's morning.
So what did they do the night before? Because they said they did a lot of things other than sex.
I'm assuming that he pulled her pants down and went to Chowtown.
Okay.
Because he said
she said that she wanted to reciprocate what he did during the bite, and his eyes were misty with release. So I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing everything. Yeah, like she seems to enjoy sex as aftercare, which is quite nice, you know. Yeah. After a panic attack, you want to go through a few more rounds of activity.
Probably not good for longevity, but in this instance.
But yeah, like maybe it is that naivety of like, oh, I can't tell you that I love you, but I can show you that I love you by doing physical things that are synonymous with love. And it's like, well, actually, no, I don't think that touching is Hudson's love language. It might be part of it. He's quite touchy-feely, but he's only been touchy-feely in the last few weeks where he's realised that he's had permission to be.
Right.
But all along, his love language is very much talking.
Yeah, and kind of and playful arguments and things.
Yeah, and then like she's literally stopping that and going, "Nah, I'll give you a blowjob instead." And it's like, well, sure, he's a teenager and he's probably not going to say no to that, but at the same time, that cannot be your balm.
Your go-to.
For every time that you need to physically tell something that you are struggling with. Because if you can't tell your mate that you're struggling, and even though it's very, very obvious that you're struggling, probably need to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah.
And it would like really upset me that she was like, well, you kind of segued into sex just now. So I'm going to segue into sex just now. And him saying you don't have to was very appropriate, where he was like, I know I just told you I love you, but that does not mean that I'm expecting something from you or that you have to cover it up with sex to avoid having to say that you love me back and don't mean it. Like, it's okay. We'll do something else. And she's like, no, I want it. And he's like, yeah, sure, cool, hormones. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
But hey, smart's good.
We have to analyze these scenes in depth, or else there would be no podcast. For those of you who are listening and you're like, they're ruining it. They're ruining the special moment.
Yeah, but oh my God, if we did a podcast like analysis on like some actual smut, Jesus Christ, there would be no dialogue.
Yeah.
The relationships in them are awful.
Oh God, you've got to read Den of Vipers. Get it on your TBR list ASAP, Amber. It is
Well,
pure
I can
filth.
only ever read smut on a Kindle because, oh my God, the faces I pull. Specifically when they use any other word for penis than penis. Or like, you know, like dick or anything like that, that's fine. But when they start like throbbing member and you're like, gee, come on. Come on. Apex of the thighs. Jesus Christ. It's like they're like, oh, we need another synonym. Come on.
Yeah.
Organ. No, I don't want it to be referred to as that.
They've got
I feel like I have like a liver in my hand.
They've got a whole list of them saved in a Trello board where they just pull from, like, oh, we haven't used this word in 16 pages. Let's toss this one in.
Yep. And it just gets very gross as well. Like, definitely, like, you could be really into it and you're like, this is working. Oh, God. And you pull a face and wince and you're like, no, put off now. Do men have that when watching porn?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Like, they're like way into it, but then there's that one thing, they're just like, nope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was too much.
Yes. 110%. I've had these discussions before. Absolutely. It's like on to the next video. That was immediately.
I suppose they have a next video, and it's only going to be like however long, like 4 minutes to 10 minutes long. Like you could watch a GIF, 3-second GIF.
Yeah.
But yeah, like with a book, if you've been spending however many hours reading into it and getting invested with the characters, and then all of a sudden there's that one off-putting moment where suddenly tentacles are involved,
You judge
you're like,
them.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Whoa, Nelly! Calm down. You don't want to start another book.
Hudson the tentacle monster.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So I agree. You'd said that after Hudson leaves to go to his room to take a shower, because, yeah, he probably should after all that.
He's sweaty.
Macy comes
but
over.
Grace doesn't. She likes to stew.
Yeah, she's just stewing in it.
She's like, I'm steaming in filth.
Macy comes in. She's like, I want all the details. And Grace is like, no.
Yeah, it really confused me because Grace's like best friend is Macy. Like, she's the one that she talks to about things, like best friend things, and that's the first thing that I would want to do is talk to a best friend, because I would want to go like, it was what we did normal. Like,
What does it mean?
our elbows supposed to be involved.
Macy's younger too, so there might be a little bit of that, like, ooh, should I talk about this with my cousin who's, because, you know, your age gaps
Yeah,
were...
but she could choose how much she tells her.
Yeah.
But she's like completely closing Macy out. And I mean, for Macy, that might be quite dismissive.
Yeah, I think that Grace
Because
still
it wasn't like a, like, not the time, like, we'll talk when we get back to school or anything like that. It's like a very much like a no and you'll never find out.
Yeah. I think...
And then as a friend, you feel very, like, suddenly excluded. Not from the, like, oh, I want to know everything about sex with a mate. But Macy's never had a mate. Grace has had 2. And she's like, okay, but when I get a mate, you're not included in my conversation. And Grace is very much like, yep, fine.
Yeah.
And it is very like, if you're already closing out that conversation, you could be missing something very, very important later on. Like, if I suddenly messaged you about something that was, I know, very inappropriate, however you were reading and it was very red flaggy, and you're like, hold on, that's not okay. No matter how much you love your husband, that is not okay. I'd be like, oh, okay, someone's keeping me in check. And actually, what I thought was normal is not normal. And I need to go and do a bit more research. Because if you don't open that discussion, no one ever learns from anything.
Yeah, the outside perspectives.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that they know and can look at your dirty underwear and know all of the intimate facts and things that are happening behind closed doors. But if you close that conversation from somebody, you're not only stopping yourself from learning, but also you're stopping your friend to coming to you later on down the line and saying, like, this happened today and I feel very uncomfortable with it. Can we discuss it?
Yeah.
And you might be able to be that one person that they feel comfortable talking about it with, but you've stopped the conversation dead and they might never feel comfortable ever saying anything ever again. Because if they think, well, she doesn't feel comfortable talking about herself, why would she want to listen to about mine?
Well, I think that, I mean, if I wanted to play devil's advocate here, Macy could have come into the conversation a bit less like gossipy,
forceful,
right? Like, tell me everything. It could have been like, you can talk to me. Like, obviously something happened. If you need to talk, like, I'm here. Yeah. I'm interested in hearing about it, but I'm more concerned about you. So maybe when we get back to the school or when you've had some time to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, like, I also think that Macy probably would have been able to coerce it out of her. I mean, not necessarily in a bad way, coerce, but maybe coax it out of her. But then they all were joined immediately by Eden and Flint.
Yeah.
And Luca. So it probably would have been a very inappropriate setting for them to have that discussion anyway.
Though Luca and Flint are not being shy at all about the fact that
No, they're not being very private at all. And if anything, Grace kind of gets like that sly smirk of like, oh, I'm in with what they do in the bedroom and I feel important, but I'm not going to participate in the conversation.
Yeah, it's like everybody knows that I left here with Hudson and Flint and Luca left together. So it's clear what happened, but yeah.
But no one gets to know anything.
Yeah.
Except everybody when Hudson can't leave.
All right. Are you ready for your spoiler? I already read. I wasn't going to read it, but then I sat here and I read it anyway.
Yes.
It was so long. I was like, well, there must be something interesting in here. So let's go ahead.
It was because I was like, oh, well, I don't want to just write one tiny sentence and then go, I don't know what this means.
Right?
What did I write?
All right.
But yeah.
Ah, woo, 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 woo. Ah, woo. All right. Woo. All right. Get into it.
So this is all about semantics. When Grace says choose, she means choosing Hudson over her own safeguarding. When Hudson says choose, he thinks that she's going to pick Jackson. Jackson hasn't been an option for her in ages. Like, you can tell about the way, like, she talks about him. There is no romance.
Yeah.
At all.
It's
like,
dead.
she's not talking about, I wanna break the bond with Hudson so that I can get back with Jackson. I mean, they went to the bloodletter and found out that was an option, but she hasn't pursued it at all. No matter how many arguments they have, no matter how many times their life is in danger, at no point has she gone back to that, well, maybe we could.
Right. And she's already told Hudson that she's willing to try with him.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's like, Jackson's not been an option for her at all in a very, very long time. But this means that, like, both of them are showing their own insecurities about the same fear of someone being chosen, but the different outcomes are what's expected. But, like, Grace is afraid that if she chooses Hudson, she's ignoring all her own, like, personal safeguarding warning bells. And then that she's going to be destroyed if she loses him like everybody else that she has. Meanwhile, Hudson's afraid that he will always lose to his brother. That he will always have to be the bigger man and step down. Because he does. He knows that there was no way of him winning the war, so he had to let Jackson kill him.
And his parents his mom chose Jackson too. Like, Jackson really got the better end of the deal going with the bloodletter, where Hudson was raised to be the pet.
His fear isn't that Grace is going to choose someone else. It's that Grace is going to choose his brother.
Yeah.
And that he's going to have to be the bigger man again and go, well, you choose. And then therefore, I have to let you choose. he wouldn't fight for her, not because he doesn't want to fight for her, but because he believes that Grace has the right to choose, but also that Jackson will always win.
Yeah.
And that's a very sad thing to realize, because Jackson ain't all that.
Yeah, it's so devastating too, because when they get back to Katmere, and probably our next episode, or no, it'll be the episode, it'll be a couple episodes ahead, but when they get back to Katmere and Jackson,
they're so happy.
Yeah, they're so happy. They're planning on going back to Hudson's room, and she's going to stay there. And then Jackson just pops up, starts the fight, and then Grace, kind of makes that decision, like, I have to get back with Jackson to save him. And Hudson goes back down to his room.
Which is a stupid decision, because who said that would fix it?
Right, exactly. And the bonus chapters, I can't remember which one, I think Vampire Court, Hudson goes back to his room alone, burns their poetry book, turns on Breaking Benjamin, throws axes, and then Grace ends up...
has an angsty moment.
Grace ends up coming downstairs, and he doesn't even want to accept her into his bed, because he knows that she's already made her choice, and if he accepts her back, it's just going to break him more, but he can't turn her away, and she ends up staying the night with him anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really sad, because it's almost like, we know we're not going to...
We're saying goodbye.
Yeah, we know we're not going to stay together, so let's have this one more moment.
It's such a stupid theory. Like, why don't they go back to the bloodletter and say, like, you fucked up,
fix this,
you royally screwed the one thing you had that was close to a son. You screwed him up. You not only set him up to failure by creating a fake bond that was then very easy to, like, rip apart, but then you gave him a spell that he could use to rip it apart, and then he's now not got a soul. You done fucked up. Fix it.
And she likely,
but they don't.
She likely does have the power to fix it.
But how are they planning on breaking Hudson's bond and getting Jackson's bond to be fixed anyway? They're going on this huge, like, quest to get the crown and to go get the killable beast and stupid thing. But just go 20 miles down the road into the fucking ice cave and ask a question.
I think it was more than 20 miles, but...
Yeah.
No, I...
Not in the UK.
Not in the
20 miles and you end up in the ocean. Either way.
Well, guys, next week... we will be carrying on with the remainder of the dragon court scenes, and then the week after.
Yay! The up in the air.
Yeah, I forgot that those were two separate nights.
Yeah,
it's a big long celebration. So first night was dancing and getting
food.
An item from the horde, and then the second night is going and watching the fireworks and those golden dragons.
Do you think that Grace, so Grace is originally from San Diego, but then she goes to Alaska, and then the Dragon Court is in New York. I don't think somebody from San Diego who is 18 probably would have gone to New York very often.
No, probably not, but it is a common school trip. I mean,
Really? School trip to New York sounds crazy.
Yeah, I mean, New York, a lot of people go to New York. Most people, especially where, I mean, I'm obviously a lot closer to New York, but if you talk to people like on the street, I would say like 50% can say like, I have at some point traveled to New York for one reason or another, whether it be, tourism or whatever. But I've never been there, but I've talked to plenty of people who have visited, because it's like, I don't know, there's like a couple main areas in the U.S. that people choose to visit for whatever reason, and that just happens to be one of them.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, she doesn't really be spending much time doing New York things. Like, she's very much like, oh, dragons. But she's not like, I want to go to Broadway. I want to go to, like, I want to go to this place. I want to go for, I don't know anywhere in New York. Is that obvious?
Yes.
I want to go there, and then I want to go there, and I want to go in there, and then I want to go up the Empire State Building. Is it in New York? Just
Yes.
Is that in New York? Yeah, like she didn't do any of that.
Well, she was a little busy.
She does have a unique tourist perspective walking above the city at night.
Yeah, she's getting to see more than she would if she had just been walking around in a very...
However, this would have been the perfect segue to send photos to Heather and be like, school trip took me to New York. Look where I am.
Yeah, this is why you can't come to graduation.
But she doesn't. She's entirely forgotten that Heather exists.
Yeah.
Was she mentioned the entirety of court?
Yes.
Okay. Because I don't remember it.
Yes, and at the end, obviously. There's a...
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, like we said, Charm is coming out on the 8th. Walmart will have the Shadow Realm edition. Barnes & Noble will have Dragon Court. Books A Million will have Witch's Court. Target will have Vampire Court. And I believe that you need to go through Book People. If there's a Gargoyle Court, it will be through them and independent, like, retailers. I think that one's a little bit different than the others. So it's the
And the UK will have none.
Well, I'm going to go get Dragon Court and Shadow Realm, and then I will send you whichever one you like the design of, because they'll have different designs on the inside jacket. So I'll read both the bonus chapters for both, and then I'll send you whichever you'd like.
Okay.
So
exciting.
Guys, thanks so much for listening. Make sure that if you end up not getting your copy of Charm on the 8th, that you skip our episode on the 16th until you can get caught up, because we will be doing a full overview. We'll have...
Unless you love spoilers.
Yeah, it's only going to be spoilers. That's it. So
some people do. Some people go, I want to know everything before I read it, which is a bit weird.
I would never.
Sure.
Yeah.
I get physically angry.
Yeah, me too.
Which is why we've been so careful. But
I'm
careful sorry
enough.
I'm sorry to whoever we ruined things for.
We apologize. We'll try to do better.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Oopsie.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.